Rain lashed the windows as we huddled over my laptop, editing a series. His shoulder pressed against mine, warmth bleeding through cotton. "This one," he said, pointing to a shot of a fractured mirror. "It's us. All the broken pieces we pretend aren't there." I turned. His gaze wasn't on the screen. The air crackled. "Ethan, don't." He stood abruptly, knocking over the bourbon. I should go. But his hand found mine in the dark. "Before we start, thank you for coming to my channel. Your participation is my happiness. Let me know where you are and what time it is now." Okay, now let's get into the story. I used to think love was a fixed image, a snapshot you could frame and hang on the wall unchanging. My husband, Mark, was a trauma surgeon, his hands steady, his heart steadier. At 34, he'd already saved lives in war zones and disaster areas. Me? I was Clara, a freelance photographer chasing light in a world that often felt too dark. We'd been married 6 years, our bond forged in quiet evenings where he'd stitch my scraped knees from hiking mishaps, and I'd edit photos of his smiling eyes under surgical masks. Then came the earthquake in Marisol. "It's a month-long mission," Mark said, zipping his duffel bag. His voice was calm, but his knuckles whitened around the handle. "They need surgeons." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. A month alone in our Brooklyn loft, with only my cameras and the ghosts of our laughter. The first week was a blur of deadlines and silence. I photographed foggy mornings on the East River, the mist blurring the skyline into a watercolor. But at night the loft echoed. I'd play Mark's voicemails on loop. "Miss you, Clara. Stay safe." Until his voice felt like a stranger's. On day 10 the doorbell rang. Ethan stood there, a leather-bound notebook in one hand and a bottle of bourbon in the other. Mark's college roommate, now a best-selling novelist with a reputation for writing tragedies too raw to be fiction. At 36 he carried a rumpled charm, his beard streaked with premature gray. "Clara," he grinned, holding up the bourbon. "Heard you're drowning in solitude. Rescue mission." I laughed despite myself. We'd never been alone before. Ethan was always Mark's friend, the one who'd crash on our couch after book tours, scribbling plot twists on napkins. But that night, as we sat on the floor surrounded by my prints, he studied a photo of Mark and me at our wedding. "You cropped out the champagne spill," he said, tracing the edge. "How did you?" "Mark told me. Said you tripped and soaked his tux." His smile turned wistful. "He kept that stain like a trophy." The bourbon burned my throat. "Why are you really here, Ethan?" He hesitated. "You looked lonely in your last Instagram post. The one with the empty chair." I froze. The photo, a stark black and white of Mark's vacant seat at our dining table, had felt too intimate to share. Yet he'd seen it, understood it. He came back. Day 12. Ethan brought takeout and dissected my portfolio, calling my work brilliantly haunted. Day 14. We argued about Hemingway versus Fitzgerald, his passion sparking something I'd buried. Day 16. He found me crying over a rejection email, my camera abandoned. "Hey," he murmured, kneeling beside me. His thumb brushed a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. "Your worth isn't in their inbox." His touch lingered. The storm hit on day 18. Rain lashed the windows as we huddled over my laptop, editing a series. His shoulder pressed against mine, warmth bleeding through cotton. "This one," he said, pointing to a shot of a fractured mirror. "It's us. All the broken pieces we pretend aren't there." I turned. His gaze wasn't on the screen. The air crackled. "Ethan, don't." He stood abruptly, knocking over the bourbon. I should go. But his hand found mine in the dark. The rain kept falling. Ethan's hand tightened around mine, his callous fingers grounding me in the storm's chaos. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the warmth of his palm and the ragged sound of our breathing. Then he pulled away, leaving cold air where his touch had been. "This is a bad idea," he muttered, pacing the room like a caged animal. His eyes flicked to the wedding photo on the mantel, Mark and me, drenched in champagne and laughter. "I shouldn't have come." "Then why did you?" He stopped, his back to me. "Because your photos scream what you won't say. And I'm selfish enough to want to hear it." The next morning, Ethan returned with a proposition. "Collaborate on a project. A fusion of your visuals and my words," he said. dropping a manuscript draft on my desk. The title glared up at me, Fractured Light. Why me? Because you see the cracks everyone else ignores. I agreed, telling myself it was professional. But when his words began threading through my images, a wilted rose paired with a passage about dying love, a shadowed alley echoing a stanza on regret, the line between art and intimacy blurred. Mark called from Marisol, his voice crackling over a weak connection. They're sending us deeper into the wreckage. Signal might drop for a few days. Be safe, I whispered, gripping the phone. Always. When the call ended, Ethan was leaning in the doorway, a half-empty coffee mug in hand. He's a hero, isn't he? Don't. Why? Because it's easier to pretend he's infallible. His gaze dropped to my trembling hands. Even heroes leave shadows, Clara. We worked late, the loft bathed in the amber glow of my darkroom lamp. Ethan's sleeve brushed my arm as he leaned over a print of storm clouds. This one, he said, his voice low. It's not just weather. It's rage. Your rage. I stiffened. I'm not angry. Liar. He turned me to face him, his thumb brushing the smudge of developer fluid on my cheek. You're furious he left. Furious you need him. Furious you don't. I shoved him back. Get out. He left. But his manuscript stayed open on the desk, a single line circled in red. The heart is a darkroom. What develops there isn't always what you exposed. 3 days without Ethan. 3 days of silence from Mark. On the 4th night, a knock. Ethan stood drenched, a battered copy of The Great Gatsby in hand. I'm sorry, he said, water pooling at his feet. But you're the only person who doesn't look at me like I'm a tragedy. I let him in. We didn't work. We didn't speak. We sat on the floor, passing the bourbon until the room spun. His knee pressed against mine, his laugh rough and unfamiliar. You're drunk, I slurred. So are you. When his lips grazed my temple, I didn't move. Clara, he whispered, let me show you what honesty looks like. The camera between us clicked. A self-portrait of our reflection in the darkroom glass, fractured by light and lies. Thank you for listening to the story so far. Your encouragement means a lot to me. Please comment and share your thoughts here. I love you and I am so grateful to have you on this journey with me to explore the story further. The photo hung between us like a ghost. Ethan stared at the darkroom print, our fractured reflection frozen in time, his lips grazing my temple, my eyes wide with a hunger I couldn't name. It's raw, he said, voice trembling. Real. I snatched it from his hands. Delete it. Why? He stepped closer, the scent of bourbon and ink sharp in the air. Because it's the first honest thing you've created in years? The loft felt suffocating. I crumpled the photo, but the image seared itself into my mind. 2 broken people clinging to a lie. Mark's call came at dawn. Static crackled as his voice broke through. Clara, the evacuation route collapsed. I'm okay, but... The line died. I collapsed against the wall, gasping. Ethan found me there, knees pulled to my chest, the crumpled photo at my feet. Let me help, he said, reaching for me. I recoiled. You've done enough. We didn't speak for days. I buried myself in editing, scrubbing every trace of Ethan from the fractured light manuscript. But his words bled through, unrelenting. Love is a developing solution. It burns what it's meant to reveal. At midnight, I found a new photo slipped under my door. Mark, blurred and distant in a makeshift hospital tent, a bandage on his arm. On the back, Ethan's scrawl. He's human, Clara. So are you. The gallery opening was Mark's idea. Surprise, he said, stepping off the plane, his smile strained. I rearranged my rotation. Thought we could celebrate your exhibit. My stomach dropped. The exhibit, our exhibit, featured Ethan's words beside my photos, including the one I tried to destroy. You'll love it, I lied, kissing his cheek. His scent, antiseptic and sandalwood, felt foreign now. The gallery buzzed with critics and strangers. Mark lingered at the champagne table, his surgeon's hands clumsy around a flute. Ethan arrived late, his gaze locking onto mine across the room. You look radiant, he said, voice low. Don't. I gripped my camera like a shield. He nodded to the centerpiece, a blown-up print of fractured light, our faces half hidden in shadow. They're calling it a masterpiece. It's a mistake. Is it? He stepped closer, his breath warm on my neck. Or is it the only truth you've ever shown? Mark's laugh echoed from across the room. Ethan froze, his mask slipping. For a heartbeat I saw it regret. Then he vanished into the crowd. Later, in the gallery's back room, Mark found me crying. "Talk to me," he pleaded, wiping my tears with his thumb. I wanted to, but the words turned to ash. His phone buzzed, a trauma alert. He kissed my forehead, his touch lingering. "We'll fix this when I get back." The door closed. On the desk, Ethan's final manuscript page glared up at me. Every frame has a shadow. Every lie a cost. The gallery's silence pressed down on me. Mark's plane had barely lifted off when Ethan reappeared. His silhouette framed in the darkroom doorway. "You left this," he said, holding up the crumpled manuscript page. His voice was softer now, stripped of its usual edge. I didn't turn. "You should go. Not until you admit it." He stepped closer, the paper trembling in his hand. "You're not staying for him. You're hiding from yourself." The darkroom lights hummed, casting red shadows over the photos of Mark. Heroic, distant, untouchable. I grabbed a pair of scissors and sliced through the manuscript, the words "every lie," a cost falling to the floor. "Get out." He did. But his absence left a void louder than his words. Mark's text came in fragments. "Landing in Marisol. Another aftershock. Stay safe. Love you." I deleted the last one. The nightmare started that night. Visions of Mark buried under rubble. His surgeon's hands reaching for me as Ethan's laughter echoed. I woke drenched in sweat, my camera clutched to my chest like a shield. At dawn I drove to the river. The fog hung thick, obscuring the bridge where Mark had proposed. I raised my camera, but the lens stayed empty. A metaphor I couldn't escape. Ethan found me there. "You're chasing ghosts," he said, leaning against my car. "And you're a distraction." "Am I?" He tossed a pebble into the water. "Or am I the only one who sees you?" The click of my shutter broke the silence. The photo. Ethan's reflection rippling in the fog, his face fractured by the current. Mark returned unannounced. I found him in the loft, his duffel bag still by the door, staring at the gallery catalog. The centerfold screamed our secret, fractured light. Ethan's words coiled around my storm cloud photo. "Who is he?" Mark's voice was calm, deadly. "A collaborator." He flipped to the torn manuscript page, his finger tracing Ethan's circled line. "Collaborators don't write about burning love." The room spun. "It's art. It's not real." "Bullshit." He slammed the catalog shut. "I've spent months stitching people back together while you're here stitching lies." I flinched. "You left first. To save lives." His mask slipped, revealing raw anguish. "What's your excuse?" That night I packed a bag. Ethan waited downstairs, his motorcycle idling. "Where to?" "Anywhere but here." We rode until the city lights faded, the wind erasing Mark's name from my lips. At a roadside motel, Ethan traced the scar on my wrist, the one Mark had stitched after a darkroom accident. "He's in your bones," Ethan said, pulling away. "I can't compete with that." "Then why did you try?" He kissed me, bitter and fleeting. "Because broken things recognize each other." Morning brought clarity. And guilt. I left Ethan asleep, his manuscript pages scattered like confetti. At a payphone I dialed Marisol. A nurse answered. "He's in surgery," she said. "A collapse in the ward." He insisted on staying. The receiver slipped from my hand. The payphone's dial tone screamed in my ear. I left Ethan's motel room without a note, the roar of a passing truck drowning my footsteps. The road back to the city blurred, my hands white-knuckling the steering wheel as if it could anchor me to reality. Marisol. Surgery. Collapse. The words pulsed like a metronome, each mile tightening the knot in my chest. When I reached the airport, Mark's hospital number burned into my phone. A nurse answered, her voice clipped. "He's stable. Lost a lot of blood, but he's awake." Relief buckled my knees. "Can I speak to him?" A pause. "He's resting." Ethan found me at the terminal gate. "You're going back," he said, more statement than question. I didn't turn. "I have to." He dropped a manila envelope on the seat beside me. Inside, every photo we'd taken together, Our fractured reflection, the storm clouds, the river fog. You left these, he muttered. They're yours to burn. I clutched the envelope, the edges digging into my palm. What about fractured light? He laughed hollow. It was always yours. I just wrote the captions. His footsteps faded, swallowed by the boarding call. Marisol smelled of antiseptic and dust. Mark lay in a makeshift ICU, his arm bandaged, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. A photo of us, sunset at the Brooklyn Bridge, was taped to the four-pole. Clara, he rasped, his surgeon's hand trembling as he reached for mine. I collapsed into the chair, tears blurring the room. I'm sorry. For everything. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. That night, I burned the photos in the hospital courtyard. The flames ate through Ethan's words first, then our faces, leaving only ash. A nurse watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. Fire's illegal here, she said finally. I stamped out the embers. Some things are worth the risk. Mark recovered in silence. We didn't talk about Ethan. We didn't talk about the exhibit. We talked about the weather, the coffee, the way the Marisol sun painted the rubble gold at dawn. On the flight home, he slid a sealed envelope across my tray table. Inside, a single negative, the champagne-soaked wedding photo, uncropped, unfiltered. I kept the original, he said. Imperfections included. The loft felt smaller when we returned. I boxed the fractured light prints, storing them under the bed where memories belong. Mark went back to saving lives. I went back to chasing light. Sometimes when I develop photos in the darkroom, I see Ethan's shadow in the grain, a ghost of what almost was. I don't delete those shots. I let them exist, blurred and quiet, reminders that not all fractures need fixing. Mark and I eat dinner at the table now, the empty chair replaced. We laugh about spilled champagne. We don't mention storms. As for Ethan, his latest novel tops the bestseller list. The dedication page reads, "To the ones who develop in the dark." I haven't read it. And that's it for today's story. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and share your feelings. Did you relate to any of the characters? Or if you were in their shoes, what decisions would you make? I'd love to hear from all of you. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, hit one. Subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.